Mr. Weinbaum, thank you very much indeed for accepting my invitation for this interview. The first question is, it has been almost 2 months since the Taliban came to power in Afghanistan. What do you think was the main reason for the Taliban's success in Afghanistan?
Well, I think you have to trace it mostly to the agreement that the United States made with the Taliban in February of 2020. That really implanted the idea that the U.S. and its allies, its partners in the conflict, were determined to leave, or had committed themselves at least to leave. Even then, I think that many in the defense community and in Afghanistan, in the political classes in general, didn't believe it was going to happen. They thought the United States had invested too much in Afghanistan to really walk away completely, as was required by the agreement with the Taliban. But when President Joe Biden came in April of this year, announced that he was also intent upon leaving, and although he would not leave on the 1st of May, he would leave some 3-4 months later. Well, at that point, I think that the unraveling, coming apart of the Pakistan Defense Forces really began. The loss of morale, and particularly the loss of what would become inevitable over the next few weeks of the U.S. air power, which had really been the key, as much as anything, to stabilizing the situation, such that although the Taliban were making enormous gains in the countryside, they had not penetrated the population centers.
Mr. Weinbaum, why did the U.S. military decide to withdraw from Afghanistan despite being aware of weakness of the Afghan government and its army?
Well, look, the ultimate decision was not really the military. The military did not want to see a complete withdrawal. It argued that with a small force, there would not be the loss of morale. There would be the retention of the air power. The contractors would be able to remain. In other words, it would be a kind of status quo, because at that point, the United States had approximately 3,500 troops there. And the military, at least the belief is that the military suggested about 4,000, 4,500. And they thought that with that number, they could stabilize the situation so that morale would not crash. Once it became obvious of the way in which the United States intended to go with a full departure, then what we saw was a loss of the will to fight on the part of the security forces. And then it was just a matter of time. And even so, nobody expected it to go that quickly.
But Marvin, some believe that the Taliban will not stay true with their agreement with the United States. What is your opinion?
Well, on the agreement of February, no, they didn't. They didn't because every indication is they never broke their ties with Al-Qaeda. And also although they did keep their agreement not to attack American and Allied forces as they were leaving. And so they did honor that. But importantly, they had agreed in the understanding of February 2020 that they would enter into serious negotiations with other Afghans. They didn't say the government as such, but with other Afghans. Well, it took 6 months before they actually sat down, and that was only after the Kabul government, under pressure from the United States, released 5,000 of the people that they selected they wanted released. So then for the next 5 months, there was absolutely no progress toward any negotiations. At best, all they did was discuss how we should have negotiations. They never sat down and conceded anything. And then early in the year, after the election, it was very clear they had no intention to negotiate at all, even though they would not break off the negotiations. Formally, they had no interest. They now saw clearly the military victory as a strong possibility. They didn't need a political victory because that was another route to power, that they would get a deal in ultimately because of the military strength, that they could bully their way to the kind of interim government, which would then pave the way for government. But by the beginning of this year, they said, no, we can have it all. We don't have to compromise on anything. And that's where we are now.
Would you please fix your cell phone, because I can see your hand in a picture.
Yeah.
Yes, very good. Would you please a little bit back? Thank you. Yes, it's very good. Marvin, so it looks like going to a big loss or a big defeated for your United States government. I mean, the Biden government. It is. What do you think about that?
Oh, it is. It is. If you measure it by the fact that the U.S. government finds itself back where it was really 20 years ago, it's hard to classify it as anything other than that. This is not to say that nothing was accomplished in those 20 years. The society was basically changed. It was entirely different than the society on which the Taliban had governed in the 1990s, when there was when in effect the cities were deserts, few people. I was in Kabul in 1997, and it was a ghost town. Today, the Taliban have a very maybe vital city of people, of commerce, this is a going city. Over those 20 years, institutions were built, but most importantly, important health and educational, women's rights were certainly improved. Above all, I can put it this way: human capital was enriched to a degree that the country had never seen before. During the Soviet period, there had been improvements in certain sectors, but now there was the only real drawback was there was an insurgency going on. Had it not been for that, this poor country would have struggled through.
Okay, Marvin, what do you think about the civil resistance by women or other social groups can change the Taliban methods?
It's not going to change. The question only is, how are they going to handle it? Are they going to repress it in a way which brings upon them much strong criticism internationally? This is, I think, the question. That they will relent in any way, I don't think so. They will, when it comes to domestic policy, I don't see them as being pragmatic very much at all. On international policy, I think that they can be pragmatic. They can, for example, and
you mean sorry for interrupting your words. You mean even the introducing the cabinet by Taliban is not recognized, but it's not a way for recognize them by the other nations, right?
Well, no, the other nations are going to have to accept what they've done, but it's been a great disappointment. All of the regional powers had, including Pakistan, had advised them to at least for appearance's sake, if nothing else, have a cabinet, have a government which is more representative than the Pashtun-dominated Taliban of a cabinet of veterans from 1990. But they really ignored this. This is our victory, and we'll have the kind of leadership that we want. And that required a lot of bargaining among the Taliban themselves, because there are factions within the group. On international affairs, though, they can be very pragmatic. They can deal with countries that ideologically have nothing in common with them. And two of the most obvious examples are China and India. They will establish political and economic ties with those countries because it's in their self-interest to do so. Now, if those countries ask them to make changes in terms of their domestic policy, I think that they'll find that they'll be ignored.
So, for last question, what do you think the countries of the region can react on events in Afghanistan?
I think now their only role that they can play is to prevent a humanitarian crisis, which has already begun. They can facilitate as much as possible the kinds of services that are going to be necessary to keep large portions of the population from starving. And there may very well follow on this a health crisis of great proportions. So I think that the regional powers themselves will play a very important role. Let me say this. There can be no successful Afghanistan, whoever is in control of the country, without the cooperation of its of its neighbors. And this landlocked country has no future economically or any other way without its neighbors. So the important thing is that the neighbors not take advantage of the situation, but that they work cooperatively to try to, in this case, to get the Taliban to modify their interpretation of what is Islamic scripture.
Mr. Weinbaum, anything else to say?
I hope that suffices.